I'm absolutely thrilled to be with you today because I'm going to be sharing an update on our 2021 Tesla Model Y. This car now has 50,000 miles on it, and there's a lot to cover on this. I'm going to share with you cost of ownership, the wear on the battery, wear on the car itself, autopilot, full self-driving beta, the pros, the cons, the good and the bad, and I'm going to share all of that with you in today's video. Now, this is actually our second Tesla Model Y, and our first one was one of the first 3,000 built. It was a 2020 Tesla Model Y, and once the 7-passenger seat was available, that's when we decided to upgrade. We have 7-seat configuration in this car, and yes, we do actually use that, and I have a lot of good information on that for you. So make sure you stick around to the end because there's a lot to unpack here. Before we dive into too much detail, I do want to thank today's video sponsor, Magback. I'm about to do the dumbest thing I have ever done to my car. I'm going to intentionally curb the wheels on my car. Now, I do have the rim case from Magback, so hopefully this thing works as it's supposed to. Wow, look at that. Man, that's a lot of damage. Not to worry though, because you can remove all the damaged pieces and replace them with new ones. When you order your set, you do have the option to get an extra set just for this, so that way you can fix damaged pieces. So whether you're looking to prevent this from happening in the first place or cover up existing damage, make sure to check out Magback's rim case and use code BTG15 for 15% off your order. Thanks again to Magback for sponsoring this video. So looking at this car, we got this car in June of 2021, and since then we've put over 50,000 miles on it. And for a cost piece on this, I want to put some disclaimers out there. I'm doing my best to estimate because I have free supercharging, and that kind of makes it difficult to figure out exactly how much it's cost to operate this vehicle. So I've estimated for all of my supercharging costs, and I've used my actual costs for at-home charging. Over that 50,000 miles, I have consumed 15,904 kilowatt hours, averaging 318 watt hour per mile. And for most of you, that's probably a pretty high consumption rate. And the reason is this car lives on the highway. This thing goes on a ton of road trips, and even on a day-to-day basis, it's usually on the highway going to and from work for my wife when she uses it as well. The consumption there has been broken up between 52% supercharging, 48% at home. I'm estimating 26 cents per kilowatt hour average on supercharging and 13 cents at home. So for supercharging, I estimate we would have spent $2,179. We have spent $977 for home charging for a total of $3,157. So that's great, but how do you compare that to a gas vehicle? Well, I think a Toyota RAV4 is a really good car to compare this to because size-wise, they're very similar. And even though the RAV4 may sit a little bit higher, the actual space, you can actually get more in this Model Y than the RAV4. So we're going to use that as our basis to compare this to. So at 29 miles per gallon combined with average gas prices by month since May of 2021, we're talking $6,405 or $3,200 more, basically 2 times the cost to pay for gas in the RAV4 versus electricity in this Model Y. And that's about half of that being at supercharging rates, which is significantly higher than charging at home. On top of that, there are other costs to consider, and these are the maintenance items that you will have to go through throughout the life of this car. So over 50,000 miles, here's how much we've spent on maintenance. We have replaced the wiper blades twice at $60 total, replaced the washer fluid 3 times at $5 a piece or $15. I've done the cabin air filter twice at about $100, and the tires had to be replaced at about 35,000 miles, $852. So that gives us a total cost to date of a little over $1,000. Now, the estimated cost for a RAV4 in that same period of time, $3,200 or 3 times the maintenance cost. This shouldn't really be a surprise because there's a lot of recurring maintenance on a RAV4 that you won't have on this. That brings our grand total for the RAV4 at $9,606. And for the Model Y, $4,184. The difference there over that 50,000 miles, a little over $5,400. So it is more than twice as expensive to own a very popular crossover SUV in the RAV4. So how about reliability and maintenance from the very beginning? Well, when we took delivery of this car, there were a few things that had to be addressed. When we took delivery, there was an issue with wheel balance, and so that had to be corrected. Additionally, in the second row, the cover had to be replaced as well. So a couple of minor items at delivery that had to be taken care of. That wasn't too bad. Of course, all that was covered under warranty. Since then, I have had no other issues that had to be addressed from Tesla aside from windshields. Officially, I'm about to replace my third windshield on this car. I have never in my life had so many windshields I had to replace. I've only ever replaced one other windshield until I started owning these Teslas. Now, I'm not saying it's the Tesla's fault. There are a lot of issues in my area, but fortunately in the state of Florida, these windshields are covered under a zero deductible. So there was no cost to me, but it does lead into what we're going to talk about as one of the cons later on, and that is how long you have to wait for service. I have replaced the windshield December of 2021, March of 2023, and now August of 2023, I had another windshield broken, but of course, that windshield is on back order, so I'm still waiting for that to come in to be able to replace it. Unfortunately, last year in Tucson, Arizona, I did have a minor fender bender, so I had to replace the trim piece around the wheel and the wheel itself. So fortunately, I was not at fault, so this was on the other person to replace these through his insurance. One of the things I love about the way I configured this car is that white interior. It just brightens the space up tremendously. It looks so good, but a lot of people are so concerned about going this way and taking the leap. I have 2 young kids, so I understand the hesitation. 50,000 miles later, I'll let you be the judge on how well these seats have held up. In my opinion, these things look great, and my maintenance on these seats has been baby wipes. So I put a coating on these once a year, and that helps to prevent major stains from happening, but in between, it's usually just a baby wipe to wipe things down. Now, for tougher stains that have maybe been there for a while, or if you've never cleaned your seats, I thought this product was a gimmick until I tried it, and I didn't realize at the time, but it's actually made by Tesla for these seats specifically. This stuff works incredibly well. I actually did a test not that long ago. There will be a video coming out on showing you how good this product is. There's a link in the description. This is a Tesla product, and I cannot recommend having this enough. All that said, there is one issue that I've had with wear, and that is in the second row. So regardless of if you have the 5-seat or the 7-seat, this is probably an issue you're going to face. So what ended up happening is over time, these seat belts in the back have really rubbed away on the corners of the tops of these seats. So I've used a lot of cleaning product to get as much of this cleaned up as I can, but really it's just cutting through that top layer of this vinyl. So what are we supposed to do about this? Well, I actually highly recommend getting this thing from Spigen. This actually helps to elevate those seat belts above the seat so that they're not constantly rubbing against, keeps them in place, plus it's a little bit more convenient for those sitting in the second row to be able to reach those seat belts. You don't have to get it. It's not very expensive, but it'll help prevent this from happening. Highly recommend looking into this because this is one of the few areas where the seats have really had some wear. Now I want to get on to one of the best parts of today's video in particular, because not that long ago I did my 25,000 mile update, and I was disappointed because at the time the cost of this car, the base price was nearly $66,000, and it was hard for me to tell you at that time that I would highly recommend it because it's so expensive. Well, there have been a ton of price changes at Tesla, as many of you probably know, but I want to go through those numbers and show you how much I paid versus how much it is today. So back in May of 2021, I started at $51,490. I paid $1,000 for Midnight Silver Metallic, $1,000 for white interior, $3,000 for the 7-seat configuration, and $1,000 for the tow hitch, for a total of $57,490. Now today, that same car starts at $50,490, plus it's free for this particular paint color, $1,000 for the white. It's now $2,500 for the 7-seat, and still $1,000 for tow, which gets you $54,990. The difference of that today, though, is it's actually qualified now for the tax credit, unlike when I purchased. So if you qualify for that tax credit, and if you want to know more about that tax credit, make sure to check out this video up here. But if you do, it's $7,500, meaning this same vehicle today minus that $7,500, you're talking $47,490. And that includes all the options that I added. So That's pretty awesome. That's a great price for this car, especially considering starting in January, there's going to be a point of sale tax credit. So you're going to be able to take this off at the time you purchase this vehicle, meaning that's what you'll finance, not wait till tax time. So this is actually really awesome, and this is something I stand firm on. This is a fantastic value. You're talking about $43,000 before delivery fee and taxes for this car in base configuration. When you look across all other EVs out there, there are very few of them in this category that have over 300 miles. And of that, there's only 2 of them that qualify for some or all of the tax credit. And that's the Mustang Mach-E, which gets half, and the ID4, which gets the full credit. Now, of course, that can change over time, but my point is there are very few cars that are going to stack up against this just looking at price and range. And speaking of range, we're going to talk about degradation on the battery over that 50,000 miles. Now, there's a few ways to look at this, and you can just look at the estimated range at 100% on the car itself. Or you can do like I do, which is I track the actual BMS reading on the battery. So when I got this car brand new, here's what it looked like. It showed nominal full at 79.2 kilowatt hours. At 50,000 miles, it's 71.2 kilowatt hours, or a 10.1% degradation in battery capacity. At new, it read 329 miles on the screen, and it now reads 296 miles. So about 33 miles lost, or again, about 10%. In the real world, at 318 1-hour per mile, here's what that looks like in actual distance you're going to be able to travel. We're talking about 79.2 kilowatt hours, 249 miles at 100%, 71.2 kilowatt hours, 223.9 miles. So about 25 miles lost in overall real world range in this car. That's really not that bad. Over 50,000 miles. We're talking about 10% of actual reduction in real world range in this Model Y over 50,000 miles. That's going to be pretty good, and it's going to be hard to beat across other cars out there. Now, of course, if you have an LFP powered car like a Model 3, you're not going to have quite this much degradation, and you would actually come out even better than these numbers. I'm going to take a quick moment to talk about autopilot because Hardware 4 has recently released, and Tesla now brings out full self-driving beta in Hardware 4 just recently. So those features are now finally unlocked in Hardware 4. Now, Tesla is focused on Hardware 3, which is what this car is equipped with. Now, I do have the ultrasonic sensors, which I'm glad I have. However, they've removed those as well, which is very disappointing because in our Model X, we do not have ultrasonic sensors and it uses vision only, and it's pretty useless, at least right now. This car is pretty pinpoint accurate, and I know exactly where obstacles are around the car. So from one perspective, vision only is not exactly the best. However, it's gotten so much better even just in the last year. Since my 25,000 mile review, vision only is substantially better than it was just a year ago, and it continues to get better. Now, it still has some pitfalls. It still will phantom brake from time to time. Last year, it was basically every single day I would get phantom braking if I was using autopilot. Now, it's kind of rare that it happens, so it has improved substantially, which is great news. It still happens from time to time, but it is so much better than it was before, and beta has improved substantially as well. It's not perfect, and I still have to take over many times on the drive. My most frequent one, I had to hit the accelerator 3 times. I had to disengage 3 times. So it still has a lot of work to go, depending on where you live. I guess if you live in San Francisco, it's perfect apparently, but everywhere else in the country, it's not, and it still has a lot of work to go. But they're getting there. It is making quite an improvement over time. Now let's talk about the good stuff. The space in this car is awesome, and it's one of the biggest reasons why to get this over any other electric vehicle, including the Model 3. The space is great. The frunk, the sub trunk, all that stuff put together, plus the great legroom. It's just such a spacious car, and you wouldn't believe it, but this car actually holds quite a bit more stuff than most SUVs on the road. The comfort in this car is amazing, and when you consider camp mode when you're traveling, if you like to camp in your car, is pretty amazing. Now, what I have found over time is in camp mode, I use 1.5 to 2% per hour on air conditioning and 1 to 1.5% per hour using heat, all of course depending on the temperature when I'm using it. You cannot talk about a Tesla without talking about the supercharging network, which continues to be the best charging network on the road. I have very rarely had issues. I think in the entire time I've been driving Teslas for 3 years, I've had 3 total issues, and those issues were resolved by unplugging and moving to a stall next to it. So very, very, very uncommon to have issues with the supercharging network. One of the other reasons to really like the Model Y, especially over the Model 3, is the ride height, the seat height. The height in this car is great. It sits a little bit higher, you have better visibility, and it's easier to get in and out of. If you have a family, having the liftgate on the back is something you're really going to appreciate versus a traditional trunk. It is so much easier to get strollers in and out of this thing. A lot more space for these big bulky things that we have to take with us everywhere that we go. One of the other things that is seldom talked about is the utility of this vehicle. Yes, this thing can just be a pavement princess, but there's a ton of utility in this thing with all-wheel drive and the higher ground clearance. Plus, we're talking about 5 or 7 seat hitch, roof rack. There is so much you can do with this car, and it can really accommodate a big swath of consumers, whether you are single, whether you're married, whether you have kids, whether there's many of you, whether there's few of you. This car can accommodate just about everybody, and because it's allowed to add a trailer hitch to the back or a roof rack, you can take a lot of your gear with you as well. It's kind of a Model Y thing because the Model X can't say this, but this thing is so maintenance free. It's unbelievable. I have no issues with this car, and I do such little maintenance on it. You have to replace tires every 30 to 40,000 miles, and you're gonna have to replace the washer fluid, but that's about it. There's really not much else you have to deal with this car, which makes it pretty close to maintenance free as possible. And finally, even without the tax credit, this thing is finally affordable. This thing came out to the market affordable. It went very high in prices, but it's finally back down to being an affordable SUV. Now it's still $50,000, so it's not like it's the cheapest car out there, but when you factor in you don't have to do the maintenance, this thing's actually a lot more affordable than you probably realize. Obviously, the tax credit qualification makes this an extremely desirable vehicle, and of the cars that qualify, this one would be at the top of the list. This car is fast, it is big, the range is good. Using your phone as a key is so convenient, but better than all of these things is the software updates. I have significantly more features in this car today than when I took delivery of it 2 years ago. I actually listed everything out, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. There have been 58 features added to this car since I took delivery, and 48 of those 58 are actually true new features added to this. Things like seeing the camera when you turn the turn signal on. Now it doesn't matter at all because you're used to it, but back then it didn't have that. That's new. Things like that. So check this out. It has Disney Plus, it has car wash mode, automatic mirror dimming, full self-driving beta, the button, being able to activate full self-driving beta, immersive sound, Sentry mode, live cam, waypoints, light show, dark mode, app customization, subwoofer tuning, edit waypoints, blind spot cameras, TikTok, boombox, auto seat heaters, regen on autopilot, car colorization, bottom bar customization, single door child lock control, autopilot up to 85 miles an hour, regular brakes when regen is limited, blind spot camera position, traffic along the route, green light chime, seat belt tensioner when impact is imminent, supercharger amenities, car left open alert, Sentry and dog mode at the same time, regular brakes during normal regen, Apple Music, dog mode in the camera view, My Cue, fart mode from the app, Zoom calls with internal camera, auto turn signals, Sentry wheel flashlights, auto steering wheel heat, text size, scroll wheel customization, regen control, Tesla Vision Park Assist, tire service miles, charge on solar, Bluetooth game controllers, auto headlights when wipers are on, see multiple cameras on the Tesla app, and destination closing soon notification. I mean, it's just on and on and on. Name another car that you take delivery that 2 years later you have that much more capability in your car than when you took delivery of it. Finally, other manufacturers are getting on board with this idea. Rather than making you wait till the next model year comes out and having to upgrade, this car has way more features than when I took delivery, which is a pretty cool thing. Now, it's not just perfect and no issues whatsoever. There's actually some drawbacks to this car. And even though it's finally affordable, it's still an expensive car. So even though the cost of ownership of this thing is something closer to a Toyota Camry, It's hard to do that when you can't finance or afford the upfront cost. So it'll take 5 years basically to afford this in the same way you would a Toyota Camry. And not everybody has that kind of cash upfront to afford this car. So it's still an expensive car. And this is why Tesla is still working on the next generation Tesla, which will be the $25,000 Tesla. The average transaction price as of June of 23 here in the United States is over $48,000 for a new car, which is crazy that is the average, and this car is a couple $1,000s more than that. So again, it's right there in the average, which is great, but it's still not an affordable car from that perspective. The price volatility cannot be understated. This car alone has had 11 changes in prices just this year. That doesn't include the price changes of 2021 or of 2022. The price volatility has really upset a lot of owners, understandably so. When you pay $10,000, $15,000 more for a car than what it sells for today, that really hurts how your car sits from a value perspective. It takes a ton of money out of your pocket when that happens. And until things settle down and until this becomes more of the norm on the street, you're still at the early stages of this technology, meaning you're going to pay a premium for being an early adopter. The suspension on this car is kind of rough. It's not that it's a bad suspension, it's just a more sport-tuned suspension. And Tesla has made an update to that as of 2023. So there's now the comfort suspension. But in my case and everybody else who has a 2022 or older, the suspension is pretty stiff. And I got around that by investing in new wheels with a much larger sidewall on the tires. That has added a bunch of comfort to this vehicle. It makes it more comfortable on the road. Even though this thing has a third row and it does officially accommodate up to 7 people, that third row is tiny. Even for children, it's still tiny. The legroom is super tight. So our 7-year-old sits back there sometimes, but he still gets kind of claustrophobic back there. And because there's no air vent, you really need to leave the middle seat down to help with airflow if you're in a hot climate. Otherwise, airflow doesn't really get back there very well. And that makes this really a 6-seater. Now, service is hit and miss. So if you need service on this car, which hopefully won't happen, but if you do, it's really hit and miss, whether it's good service, whether it's bad service, whether you wait a month, whether you wait a few days. So there's still a lot of work to be done there, and Tesla is working on that. Even in my area, they're building a brand new service center. So this is going to be solved long term, but in the short term, it's still a pain point at Tesla. So depreciation in this car, 40% versus 20% for a RAV4. That's not even in the same ballpark. So the point is, this thing is losing value so much faster than the average car. Now, that wasn't the case in 2021 when it was gaining value, but times have changed and it's come back to normal. And unfortunately, with all these price changes, it's made a lot of the used market very afraid of taking these off the street, bringing values down. Like I said, being early adopter, the technology is changing so fast. 4680s have been in cars now for some time. They just made another step forward in developing those. There's still several iterations of the 4680 battery cell to come. As these bigger things happen, these cars are going to become less and less relevant for today's market. So they will be obsoleted over time. And that is just the nature of how technology moves. In summary, this is the best electric car on the market today. And the reason why is because it hits so many things and it hits so many things so well. This car executes in ways that most cars are not able to. It gives you a great price, gives you a lot of space, it gives you great range, and it gives you the Tesla charging network. This car does have some drawbacks, but on the whole, this is the best all-around electric car on the road. I have a Model 3, a Model X, and this Model Y, and this continues to be my favorite car that we have. The Model Y is the best electric car today on the whole. It combines the size with the price, with the range, with the Tesla supercharging network. No other car can execute on all of those things as well as this car does. Bringing that all together on top is these cars have turned out to be absolutely bulletproof. Yes, there are some gremlins out there. Yes, there are some bad cars out there that just will always have issues, but this car on the whole has been the most reliable car I've ever owned, and our Model 3 is much the same. The Model 3 and the Model Y have absolutely become the standard in the industry, and they really have become that quote-unquote Toyota Camry of the electric world. These cars just require so little maintenance, and this car has been trouble-free for us like it likely has been for many of you. So I do appreciate you joining today. I hope that this was informative, and I look forward to catching you on the next one.